Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. We've still got around 5 minutes, so I hope you can hear me. If you could just check your volume settings. If you can't hear anything, then hopefully people will drop a question in the questions box. What we're going to do is give it about 5 minutes just to make sure all attendees have joined, and then we'll commence the webinar in a moment. So if you just bear with us for a while. Thank you. Hello, thank you for the new people that have joined. As I said a moment ago, we are just waiting a couple extra minutes just until we've got all attendees, and then we'll start in about 2 or 3 minutes. So you just bear with us for a couple minutes. Thank you. Hello, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to commence the webinar now. I hope that we have all attendees who have joined us at this point. As the slide says here, if you have any questions throughout this webinar, if you can submit them in the question box that you'll see in your menu, we'll either answer them throughout the webinar if it's something that we can send you a link to a certain piece of information, or our attendees, our speakers today, will be able to answer them for you. So what we're going to do initially is just run a quick poll just to gauge who's joining us today, and that will help us obviously tailor the way we're working through the content. So we'll just start the poll. If you just submit your answers to the poll, thank you. Still a few more people to vote. And they've got one more person to vote, and then we'll close the poll in a second. Okay, thank you. Brilliant. Okay, so really we just wanted to gauge who's on the line. As we can see, the majority of people, we have got a split, but the majority of people are non-University of Leeds graduates who are considering applying for our biopharmaceutical development programme. But we've also got University of Leeds graduates and those that who have already applied as well from University of Leeds and elsewhere. So that's great. We've got a real nice split of attendees today. Okay, so moving on. I just want to introduce you to our speakers today. You'll hear from them in a moment. We have John Collier, who's Professor and Programme Leader for our Biopharmaceutical Development Programme. We also have Sian Estelle, who's the Head of Science and Innovation at Covance, and she'll be telling you a bit more about the industry. And this is myself, and a lovely photo of myself there, as Marketing Manager from the University of Leeds. So really, obviously, those that are already aware of Leeds will know a bit of this information, but those that aren't, it's important to cover this. So why would you consider Leeds? We have been a university since 1904, and we're a founding member of the Russell Group. What is the Russell Group? Well, the Russell Group is a number of research-intensive universities. That basically means that our teaching is informed by the latest discoveries. We're a really global university, so you'll study along a community of 38,000 students, 7,000 of those are postgraduates, and we have students from over 170 countries, with staff from 90 different countries. So this really provides a unique perspective on your subject. As you'll see from this slide, just to pull out a couple key facts, we're the 7th most targeted UK university by graduate recruiters. So really that highlights what a stepping stone University of Leeds is and why people come here to do a master's. We've got really fantastic global links with industry, as we have with this programme with Covance. So it gets people into the career they want to get into. TEF Gold as well. What is TEF Gold? Well, it's the Teaching Excellence Framework. So this basically says that we have the highest rating possible for teaching excellence, and it really recognises the quality of teaching offered at Leeds. And as well, I'll let you read through a number of the other stats there that the University of Leeds has. So the university itself, really, I just wanted to highlight this image here, which is our campus. This shows where we're situated to the city. It's a really vibrant single-site campus, and as I'm sure some of the University of Leeds students that are on the line will agree, it's brilliant, and students feel that community feel that everything's in one place. I just want to highlight the position of the Faculty of Biological Sciences and Covance, which is situated here. So it's really close to the gym and the Students' Union, but also, 10 minutes walk to the train station as well. And then the City of Leeds, obviously. Many of you might not be from Leeds, you might have studied in other cities. So coming to Leeds could be a bit of a big trip. Well, the position of Leeds, as you can see here, we're in the heart of the UK. We're only 2 hours away from London. We have really great transport links. So if you're an international student, we are very close, I think, just over an hour to Manchester Airport, and a short bus ride or taxi to Leeds Bradford Airport as well. We're situated in the county of Yorkshire, so we're one of the greenest cities in Britain. So you've got a lot of countryside to explore, which is just on your doorstep. And the city itself, it has actually 4 universities in the area, so it's an extremely student-friendly city with a massive student population. So now I'm going to hand over to Sian, who's going to talk to you a bit more about biopharmaceutical development. So Sian, over to you.
Hi everybody, thank you for joining this. So my name's Sian, and I'm Head of Science and Innovation at Covance, and actually I'm based in Harrogate, and we're a worldwide organisation, and Covance supports just about every aspect of drug development. So I wanted to say this is why it's a good idea to do this master's course in biopharmaceutical development. And to illustrate it, I put up pictures of the top 10 drugs from 2019. So if you look at them, I'm hoping that you can recognize the difference between what we call large molecules and small molecules. The small ones are those that can be synthesized, and the ones that are really nicely colored are the large molecules. And what I want you to notice is just how much these drugs are worth. And if you looked at something like the top 10 drugs 10 years ago, it would not have looked like this. It would have been completely dominated by small molecules. And what this represents is a massive growth within the industry towards large molecules. And we are now at the stage where over 50% of the drugs that are in development, so that's not the ones that you can buy on the market, but those that are in development are in large molecules. And what this has meant is that there's been a dearth of people who really understand aspects of drug development for large molecules in particular, because we're so good at understanding the small molecules. So if I go on to the next slide, I'm just going to highlight one of these molecules to you. It's called Keytruda. I don't know if you've heard about it. Its molecule name is pembrolizumab, and it's a monoclonal antibody. As of now, it's worth considerably more than 11 billion, and we're expecting that to shuffle its way up towards the top because it's an oncology drug. And in the next slide, I'm going to try and explain to you why this has been such an incredible change within industry. So Ollie, if you go to the next slide for me, I'm just going to show you this. You can actually get this from the internet, but this is a guy with a melanoma. And in the first caption there, you can see his face. That's how he presented with the melanoma. As you can see, it's taken over just about the whole of his face on that side. And he was refractory, which meant that it didn't work, the standard of care, which was ipilimumab, which is also a monoclonal antibody. And what pembrolizumab is a checkpoint inhibitor. What it basically means is that it enhances the immune system to recognize cancer cells. And it's a truly remarkable treatment. You can see that only after 3 cycles of treatment, that melanoma has receded. So you can see the excitement that has come to industry as a way of utilizing the body's own defenses in terms of monoclonal antibodies and engineering them such that we can specifically target certain therapies. So this is behind the massive growth within industry in our ability to enhance what are utilized by the body anyway to combat disease. So if you just go to the next slide, Ollie, I just wanted to highlight to you in this next slide the industry perspective. So when Covance partnered with Leeds University, and it's actually quite a while ago from when John and I started talking about this, I'd recognised that there had been insufficient skills that we were able to attract from the external employee group, and saw this as an opportunity to be able to condense what really is about 10 years worth of experience into this course. And it's not just me that says that. We've also talked to other industry members who will say the same thing, not just from Covance, but from other parts of the industry. So in defining this skill shortage and what we were trying to do, we were trying to create a pipeline of talent, not just for Covance, but for industry in general. So taking where you are right now, having done your degree and thinking, you know, yes, I'd like to get into industry, but actually, you're not going to know what that's like. You're not going to know what the skills are that you're going to need. You're not going to have a perspective of what the whole of drug development looks like. So that's why we set up this course. We wanted to illustrate within a 2-year context, the first year, which is taught, what is that overarching perspective of drug development? And then you'd have a year within industry to do some meaningful employment and hopefully set you up into your career. So the benefit that it is for those of us in industry is that we don't have to train you in all these skills, which, to be perfectly honest, you tend to acquire through experience, which is why we say it takes 10 years. And we're also looking to find scientists that we can fast track. So, you know, we're interested in bright, intelligent, committed people who see that there is an industry that they want to work at because of the benefits that it gives to our community, to our populace. So hopefully that gives you a bit of the industry perspective on why we developed this course. And I'm going to now pass back over to Professor John Collier, who's the co-lead for this course.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm John Collier. As Sean has said, what scientists entering this industry need is both a deep technical understanding of their topic, but they also need a deep understanding of how that fits in the whole process of bringing a drug together. And that whole process is what we have based the course on, so that you will be exposed to things beyond raw science, which help you use the raw science effectively in the workplace. So my first slide really wants to exemplify what the course is and isn't, so that you are very clear what you would be getting if you came on the course. So I see it as a course that really seats science in an industrial process. You will be studying technical, genetic engineering, molecular biology, biotechnology, but you'll also be studying the economics of drug development, the clinical need for drug development, the societal drivers for better drugs. And it's how all of these fit together that defines the program of work that will be done. So everything you do is translational, taking basic understanding of science and moving it towards the patients so the patient can benefit. If you're really interested in the curiosity-driven inquiry of science, this is not the course that is right for you. It's if you're interested in applying that knowledge into products, into new medicines, then the course is right for you. And I would say it is stronger in the development part of research and development than the raw research, although it does cover both. Industry has to turn out drugs which are safe and which are effective. So everything is very, very carefully controlled with formal, legally binding regulatory frameworks. Assays have to be validated properly, and you'll be introduced to that whole framework of work. It is completely interdisciplinary. You know, I've illustrated that from the top. Science, technology, economic arguments, clinical need, experimental design, societal sort of drivers, and you will be exposed to all of that. Unusually, this course expects you to deal with that complexity, to see the implications of a decision in a plan at this point, and what are its implications at other points in the same plan. And finally, it's all delivered in teamwork-based learning. And again, this is very deliberate because industry structures work in teams. Whilst we are all individuals, we're members of interdisciplinary teams, and we need to learn how to work within that setting. And so the course is within that setting as well. Ollie, can I have the next slide? So what we're looking to recruit, as Sian has already alluded to, are very bright, recent and not recent graduates of a biological science discipline. There needs to be plenty of molecular content in your training so that you're comfortable talking about molecules. You know how to engineer, to change molecules, engineer at the DNA level, how to produce proteins, how to characterize proteins. So you've covered all of that content because we're going to build on that rather than teach you that again. We're also looking for people with leadership potential. Partly that's because industry needs leaders to populate this new and growing section of the industry. Partly because the course requires you to be a self-directed learner, and people with leadership qualities are typically motivated, resourceful, and very good at making the best of the opportunities in front of them. And clearly we want people committed to this career. Next slide. So this is what the course looks like, and you'll have seen this diagram on the website, I'm quite sure. It is a diagram that could be straight from a report from any industrial party in this field. It is the process of developing a new drug. And we have simply taken the major elements of that process and turned them into units of learning, or modules as we would call it. You study 3 or 4 simultaneously whilst you are at the University of Leeds campus, and that is 2 semesters, 7 months in total, and you will cover the module at the top, which is an orientation module, giving you the language and a very superficial look at the whole process. And then you'll go in more depth into discovery and preclinical testing, into biological material manufacturing, and into the practical skills in a regulated environment practical course. In the second semester, you'll have completed all of those in the first semester through coursework. Everything is done through coursework, perhaps with the exception of the practical exam. It also has an oral examination, a Q&A session, sort of to see that you understand the techniques you've been using, but everything else is coursework based. In the second semester, you're going to take on clinical sort of section of work. You're going to take on commercializing biopharmaceutical products, and you're going to take on seeking regulatory approval to move into man. This is integrated drug development planning. All of that is completed by about this time of the year, sort of the end of April, start of May, and then you go out into industry if you're on the full program with an industrial placement, or if you're on the shorter program, you do a research project that is industrially relevant within the University of Leeds. If you go out into industry, this is a full 12-month period. You will be working in one of a number of companies around the UK, and I've got a slide later to show where they are. And you will be doing a mixture of research and operational work in the function that you've been employed in. Those placements are paid placements, and we expect a salary in the order of £20,000 a year for students whilst on placement. If you're doing the 12-month program, which has got the same name but lacks the brackets industrial placement, then you do a semester 3 project in a research laboratory within the University of Leeds. As many of those as we can achieve will have an industrial co-supervisory arm to them, and they will always be completely relevant to this field of work. Have the next slide. So we thought we would introduce you to somebody who's actually done the course and can tell you from her perspective what the course was like and what she has done since performing the course. So I'd like to introduce Amy Reeves, who I hope has got a live microphone now.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. So just to give a bit of background to myself, I'm originally from Manchester, and I came to Leeds in 2013 to study the undergraduate in BSc Medical Sciences. And if anyone's done that course, you can start to kind of specialise in a particular field from year 2 onwards. So I started to specialise really in pharmacology with a small molecule focus. So I graduated in 2016, the summer, with a first class degree, and in the September I started the first running year of the Masters in Biopharmaceutical Development. I spent my industrial placement year at Covance at the Harrogate site in a department called immunochemistry, and this is related to a specific aspect of the drug development process. I currently work as a study manager within the immunology and immunotoxicology department, and this is a related business area to immunochemistry. As a study manager, I mainly provide scientific, technical and regulatory leadership on studies to support preclinical as well as some clinical development as well. And I mainly work closely with clients and manage the studies from start to finish, including the planning of the upfront work, the protocol writing, through to reporting and the data interpretation side of things.
Excellent, Amy. So, Amy, if I and then Sian can ask you a few questions just to try and pull out what your experience was like at Leeds, that will help those people listening to decide what they make of the course. So, can I start with that very broad question? What would you like to say about the course, Biopharmaceutical Development at Leeds? What were the highlights, and what do you think students should be thinking about as they consider applying?
So I really liked the design of the taught modules. I thought they provided quite a clear and complete roadmap from discovery through to commercialization and the legal aspects of drug development. Although they were quite separate modules, there was a lot of interrelation and integration between all of them. So you might be looking at the manufacturing aspects of drug development, but then you're also thinking about the commercial and kind of the preclinical, clinical aspects. How will you manufacture the drug for those type of studies? So there is a lot of interrelation between all aspects. I also really enjoyed the fact that there was presentations from key industry speakers. I thought that was really insightful and offered kind of different industry perspectives. For example, there were speakers from the contract research industry, which is Covance and other manufacturers and service providers. And then there was also some companies from small R&D biotech companies. So there was a real breadth of kind of different industry perspective. There was also quite a few field trips and tours which were quite memorable for me and really kind of enriched my learning experience to see how operations are kind of at first hand.
Excellent.
The course content is it's quite small, so obviously there is a lot of one-on-one time, which for me was quite ideal because there was an opportunity to ask lots of questions and have that kind of in-depth discussion with the tutors, and it does kind of give you that individual learning experience as well. You're not sat in an auditorium watching down on a lecturer. It's quite engaging, so there is that aspect as well. The lectures and the tutorials are very interactive, so it does encourage discussion, which can be quite daunting at first, but it is really good for developing things like confidence, communication and professional skills, all of which are really, really important when you transition into that industrial placement. As John has alluded already, there are quite a lot of team working exercises, and this is really, really good preparation for when you are in industry. It's very much team focused. You have to crosstalk between different departments. You might be working on a study which has elements of work which are being carried out through different departments, so having that kind of ability to work across different teams with people and produce work to a quality and high standard is really important. Essentially, the whole course is very much industry focused, so it does encourage you to develop that integrated understanding of the drug development process, and it is designed to bridge that gap between academia and industry. Finally, I would say that the 1 year placement is kind of invaluable, and I certainly found it to be a fast track into a career.
Super. I was going to ask about that placement. So what did you actually do?
So I carried out my 1 year placement at Covance at the Harrogate site, and I spent the majority of the year working in the immunochemistry department. And in this department, there are several teams. So I work mainly in the method development team. First of all, there was quite a good onboarding process, so it brought me up to speed with kind of the industry regulations and best practices, which are kind of fundamental to the industry. Covance as well have their own internship scheme, so there was a lot of meetings to tour the various departments and engage and listen to presentations from colleagues across the globe, really, because Covance is a global company. In terms of training, I was set up with a couple of what they like to call buddies, and they trained me on specific assays in the lab so that I could get up and running independently to carry out my project work for the dissertation. I found it quite good that I was given quite a bit of time to work on my dissertation project, both in the lab and as well to write up and do a bit of kind of background research. I would say that the highlight of my placement year was when I had the opportunity to present my dissertation work at a conference, and this was in Barcelona, so it was a really good experience for me. It was quite daunting. I was just kind of still a student, and I was surrounded by industry experts, but it was a really good experience to develop myself professionally by presenting, interacting with clients, industry experts as well from around the world, and just to really immerse yourself in industry. So that was a really good opportunity for me. I also had the opportunity to present my first webinar. That was great as well. Alongside the project work, you'll find that you do have opportunity to work on other things. So I worked on quite a few client studies, and this was really insightful and helped kind of my understanding of how the theory is put into practice for real life client work. Halfway through my internship, I applied for a role which was in the team that I was working in, which I was successful in getting that. So towards the end of my internship, I took on quite a bit more client work, and I really felt like I became quite an important member of the team, really.
Thank you.
That's excellent. So Amy, maybe I can follow on from that, because it would be helpful, I think, if you can explain, you know, how you got that role, what that role was after your internship, and, you know, what's your career path been since then?
Sure. Okay, so 6 months into my internship, I applied for quite a senior level position within the team that I was carrying out my placement in, and it was the role of a method developer within the immunochemistry department. And at the time, I was advised that it needed at least 5 years experience in industry, as well as potentially a PhD. So I guess this would have put some people off applying. But I actually felt quite comfortable that the knowledge I'd gained from the masters, as well as the short amount of time working in the lab, I felt quite comfortable that was sufficient for me to apply. And I guess if I wasn't successful in it, I could always take it as a learning curve and an experience. So that was kind of my attitude moving forward with that. So at interview stage, I gave a 20-minute presentation to senior managers, and that was followed by a question and answer session. I had really good feedback from that presentation style, content, scientific knowledge, and they particularly enjoyed my kind of integrated approach and understanding of how that specific role fit into the drug development process. And that was all kind of thanks to the course, really, and the great detail and quality of those taught modules. So yeah, I was really happy to be offered that role just 6 months into the placement. And over the final few months of my placement, I took on quite a bit more responsibility. As I mentioned, I started to work on more client studies, carry out further training that was needed for the role. And the placement ended in the May of 2018, and I transitioned into that role quite easily, really, because I felt like I'd already been doing it towards the back end of the placement year. So I spent a year and a half in the role of a method developer, and in September last year, I was successful in applying for an even senior position in a different department, although still related to what I was doing. So that's my current role. I now work as a study manager in the immunology and immunotoxicology department. So they perform very similar assays to immunochemistry. It's just a slightly different spectrum of the drug development process. So I guess the professional skills and client communication, regulatory strategy, as well as the technical knowledge and experience that I'd gained from the previous role was very much pivotal, really, to allow me to achieve that promotion. I guess, like with any industry, it's a ladder that you've got to climb. However, I do really feel like my experience highlights just what can be achieved with this master's. It really is a fast track into a career, and not even into an entry-level role. You know, I started out 5 grades above where I should have really started, and that's testament to the course, to the skills and knowledge and experience that I'd gained throughout the whole course, but mostly from the placement of having actually spent the time in the team that offered me a role. So it's very rewarding for the right students, and I would encourage everyone to really consider it.
Excellent. I love the way that you attributed it to everything except for yourself, and I have to say that you have been quite an amazing student. So you were an absolute joy. So my last question is, what advice would you give to prospective students? So any of the people that are here listening to this WebEx, what advice would you have for them?
I would encourage you just to think about your current career opportunities within industry. If you think about your credentials and your experience that you have, in particular any kind of lab experience, I would think about what would be available to you at this time. For me, I had a browse of job adverts. I even looked at profiles on LinkedIn just to see what kind of skills and experience was needed for an entry-level position. The undergraduate that I didn't have a sandwich year or anything like that, so my lab experience, especially in an industry setting, was quite lacking. So I knew that I needed a bit more of lab experience, but also kind of just that industry perspective, and trying to transition away from academia. So I learned quite quickly that lab experience was quite an important prerequisite for employers, and I think to have a look at what's currently available to you and put that into perspective as to where you want to be and what you want to do.
Super, thank you so much, Amy. Can I have the next slide? So, while Amy is one of our sort of first students, we have now had 2 cohorts graduate. The third one is about to graduate, and of the first 2 cohorts, everybody went straight into employment, either during the program or immediately after the program, with one exception, which was a young lady who went traveling and then came straight back into employment. They've gone into a variety of roles, some within the company they did placements in, others into other companies. Some have opted to do PhDs because they felt that was what they really wanted, and there are 2 of those. Others have gone into professions aligned to the pharmaceutical industry, medical writing, technical product development for tools and things of that sort. This was our expectation and our intention for building the course, that it would help people transit across to their professional career, and the first 2 cohorts have done it at 100%. I'm beginning to see what's happening with the 3rd cohort, and again, the story is very encouraging that they are going straight into jobs, although they don't have a complete data set yet. Next slide. So if I speak again to the shape of the course, it is a period of time at the University of Leeds campus where effectively we have structured everything to be as realistic for industry as we could possibly make it. The lectures are now seminars where you are discussing and debating the issues with the tutors. The tutors, in 3/4 of all occasions, are industrial scientists who have come into academia as collaborators to deliver the course with us. So it's not academics trying to tell you what's being done, it's industrialists who are actually doing it day to day. The coursework where most of the learning takes place are these team-based sort of pieces of coursework. They are huge, they are very involved, they are interdisciplinary, and they have outputs which again look like outputs you'll experience in industry. So you'll be reporting to senior managers, to investors, to clients, to a regulatory authority, etc., etc. You'll be reporting orally in written formats. Whatever you'll be experiencing on the job is how you are learning and being examined on the course. And then if you're on the industrial placement program, you will go to companies in a consortium that we have formed that are around the UK. So on the map on this slide, you can see some of the locations. It will mean that you perhaps will only spend the first 6 or 7 months at Leeds, and then you'll move to another part of the country. Again, the logistics of doing this from a practical point of view are very well thought through and are very straightforward. And this network of companies does change year on year, but in essence, they are offering internships or placement places in a variety of different functions, sort of across the drug discovery and development protocol. Most of them are in technical roles, but we've also had those in project management. And if you have a particular interest and you get taken onto the course, you would be wise to tell us about that interest, and we could let the network know that students perhaps with an interest in the clinical trial end are looking for placements in those sorts of areas. Next slide.
Great, thanks, John. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give a quick summary of fees and funding, and then I'll just pass back to John just to quickly give a summary of the programme. But I would say we only have had a couple questions in, and I think we've been able to answer them already. One of them was about the programme fees. So if anyone does have any questions now, I'd encourage you to submit them in the question box. And after we finish the next 2 slides, we'll have John, Sian, and obviously Amy as well on the line to answer your questions. So do submit them if you've got any. Okay, so the fees of this programme. We already have, as I said, had a question about this. For the most up-to-date information, everything is on the course page. I would encourage you to have a look on the course page. There is the link for it. If you go onto the University of Leeds website and search for biopharmaceutical development, the programme will come up with the industrial placement, obviously. And you'll be able to find out all the fee information, all the detailed information on admissions, as well as how to apply, obviously, if you want to go on and apply after this webinar. So funding as well. Obviously, keen to point out some avenues of funding. Those of you that are University of Leeds graduates or currently graduating, we do a 10% alumni bursary. So if you have studied an undergraduate degree at the University of Leeds, you'll get 10% off the fee. Also, we have the Leeds Masters Scholarships. These are scholarships that are for UK underrepresented groups. The deadline of these is the 26th of June, I believe. So you encourage you to obviously go and have a look, and you can see the criteria and if you would fit within that scholarship. We also have a couple within the Faculty of Biological Sciences specifically. So we have the Biological Sciences International Scholarship. This is for eligible international master's students studying for a taught postgraduate programme, and obviously within the faculty, and that's for £2,000. And we have the Dean's International Achievement Scholarship, which is a master's scholarship again. This is for £5,000, and it's available for the highest postgraduate achievers. So what I would do is encourage you to go onto the website. There is a scholarships page. You can really self-serve and see which scholarships you would be eligible for. We do encourage people to build a funding package. You don't just have to apply for one scholarship. There's different avenues of funding. You try and get as much money off a programme as possible to help you out. Also, obviously, I think most people are aware by now, but those of you that aren't, there is the Master's Government Loan as well. So as similarly to the undergraduate loan, they now do a Master's and a PhD loan. So I encourage you to look on the government website and find out a bit more information about that loan as well. So I'll just pass you over to John again, just to summarise the programme.
Thank you, Ollie. So I hope you feel you've understood what this programme represents. You know, there are a number of bullet points on this slide which sort of highlight some of the things that we have picked up. The two that I think are most important are numbers 1 and 3, that this is an integrated package of learning that really teaches you how the various functions come together to develop a successful biological drug. And it's also a way of fast-tracking yourself from a position of relative weakness coming into an industry. There are lots of good first degree graduates, none of whom have got much experience in industry, to being someone who is highly sought after. And we've heard that from students again and again, that prior to the course, they had very little interest in their applications from industrial employers. After the course, they were astonished at how in demand they were amongst the same group of companies. So for us, that is what this course is all about. It is to help capable people get ready to contribute to drug discovery. That's all.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. Okay, so we'll move on to questions. We've had a few questions in, so thank you very much. I do just want to flag, if anyone hasn't asked a question, or if you think of a question after, whether that be for John, Sian, or Amy, or anyone else, you can see the email address down at the bottom. That's fbsmarketing@leeds. We'll make sure your question gets answered by the relevant person. So if you think of anything after the webinar, please just email us and we'll get back to you. So initial question, I believe this one's obviously for John or Sian. Is application very competitive, and what is the ideal applicant you're looking for? I know you summarised that a bit at the start, but if you could summarise that for this person, that'd be great.
Yeah, certainly. So the application is competitive. We have about 2 applicants for every place that we offer. The course has got a limited size because of the placement provision. They are all already provided, and so that sets how many students we can appoint. So I would say that eligible applicants outnumber recipients of a place by 2 to 1. And what separates one from the other is typically their knowledge, comfort, and confidence to talk about biological molecules. So if you are coming to interview, and everybody who's going to get on the course will be interviewed either in person or remotely, if you're coming to interview, refresh yourself about molecules. You know, what are monoclonal antibodies? What did you study on your degree that really was interesting? How would you engineer new characteristics or overcome characteristics which are undesirable? So recombinant DNA technology, mutagenesis, expressing proteins. We explore those in detail in the interview, and that seems to separate those who are offered a place because they're fully worthy from those who are unsuccessful.
Brilliant, thanks, John.
Can I chip in as well?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, Oliver, because I was just going to say that, you know, obviously we expect you to be excellent scientists, you know, and that's why we set it as a requirement to have first or a 2-1. But then having said that, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be fantastic on the course, because it is very much around real life industry setting. So, you know, being able to talk to anybody, having the confidence to be able to argue scientifically your standpoint is really important. So we're looking for those kinds of interactions. It doesn't mean you've got to be very outgoing, because that isn't what makes people into a good team member or a good team leader. So it's understanding those, what we call soft skills, you know, that those aspects about yourself, and that you can also bring those out in interview is very powerful. So yeah, I just wanted to round out what John said.
Thanks, Sian. Okay, a second question we've had in is, with life sciences becoming more involved with data and analytics of lab results, does this course provide any modules or teaching in this area?
Again, I'll take that first. So the modules at the university do not have any that are purely on data analytics. It's part of the research that teams get on with in the execution of projects on many courses, but it isn't isolated and taught as one block. Perhaps once on your placement, it would be a piece of training that the company might send you on if that's relevant to the role that you're playing. But I completely agree with the question. That is the direction of travel of research and many parts of this process.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add as well, because you're absolutely right. You know, software solutions, machine learning, big data are all incredibly important aspects of drug development. But actually what's more important is understanding why you need them and the concepts behind what the information is that you're trying to amalgamate to come out with some knowledge, because just having data isn't enough. So I would say that having an industry, a pharmaceutical industry knowledge which sets the understanding of what you're trying to elucidate is actually much more important than knowing what sort of software you're going to use, because we rely on experts. And you know, the absolute key thing is having that common language. So it's understanding concepts, it's understanding, you know, statistical analysis, and you know, the pictures of why you would want to ask questions in a certain way. So I hope that makes sense, and probably indicates why we don't go into this area, or certainly not at the moment. We might later, you know, have specialist modules, but it's really giving you that foundational knowledge on which to build so that you can develop that kind of understanding.
Thank you, Sian, that's great. I'm just looking, someone has asked, can you apply for both, the industrial placement and the research project course? I don't know whether they are still undecided, but they were asking if they could apply for both.
So again, I'll take this first, John Collier again. I think the answer is yes. The modules are identical in the two until we get to the research project, and that is the only time that there is divergence. So one is done, as I've said in my part of the talk, one is done at the university, so that is the shorter course. The other is done at the host industrial collaborators site during the placement. So yes, you can apply for both. Those who are non-UK and currently non-EU will have to look very carefully at their visa requirements, and that is possibly why they would need to go for the shorter course, because you can come in on a tier 4 study visa for that shorter course currently, whereas the employment aspect of the longer course prohibits the use of a tier 4 study visa.
Great, thank you, John. We had a question regarding the alumni bursary. I think I can answer that one. Do you have to apply for the alumni bursary, or is it automatically applied to the fees So I believe you just need to let the admissions department, the relevant admissions team, know that you would like to apply for it, and then that fee will be taken off of your program fees. So you would simply need to let the Faculty of Biological Sciences admissions team know when submitting your application, or if you've already done that, you can drop them an email and they'll be able to sort that out for you. All they'll need to do is potentially look up or have proof of you studying your undergraduate degree at the University of Leeds. Okay. Does the 24,000 or 30 for the international students tuition fee cover the full 20-month course, or is it tuition fee per year?
No, the fees as published are for the full course.
Thanks, John. We had another question here, which was thanking us for an amazing webinar. Thank you very much. And also, they'd like to know how many non-UK students are currently enrolled on the MSc.
That's a great question. So we have quite a lot of European students on the MSc, but because of that Tier 4 restrictions, Tier 4 visa restriction, there are no non-Europeans on the degree active at the moment, because the only one until this year was the 20-month duration program. However, we have had people who have got European descent from Ecuador and from other parts of the world. So it is already quite cosmopolitan, of course. You know, it'll just become more so with this second stream of work.
Thanks, John. So this question is someone else. So just to clarify, there are £21,000 fees and a £20,000 paid placement.
So on the with placement, correct.
Yeah.
The company sets the stipend or the salary. We do not control that, but we have advised them all that that would be a suitable level, the £20,000 per annum level, and to my knowledge, all have identified that. Other companies who wanted to pay substantially less or didn't want to pay at all have not been allowed into the consortium.
Great, thank you, John. We also had another question. We've got quite a few still rolling in. I think they're wanting a bit of an insight into the interview process. So what kind of questions could we expect during the interview if someone was shortlisted?
Okay. So we have a standard set of questions, and some of them allow you, the applicant, to take control of it. So we will explore, why are you coming to the course and why are you a good candidate? We explore your technical depth of knowledge, as I was describing earlier, and typically Sian or I would ask you, about the extent of molecular science in your course, what were you particularly interested in, and we would just allow you to tell us about that, and we would follow up with questions around it. And then we move on to you and your character, your teamwork understanding, your leadership ability. And there are a few legal questions as well that we also need to explore. And then we open it up for the questions you have of us.
Brilliant. Is lab experience preferred in applicants?
It isn't a prerequisite, although clearly you need to be competent to discuss the molecules, and that competence is aided by plenty of laboratory experience on your undergraduate course, or a period in industry or a period in laboratories. So we do tend to get candidates who've got that, but not exclusively.
And maybe I'll chip in a little bit, and that is that within drug development, the only information that the regulators will see is data that's being generated. So it's either going to be analytical data to support manufacturing, or analytical data to support the non-clinical and clinical aspects. So it's definitely advantageous not just to have been in the lab and executed analysis, but also to understand what you were doing. And I think John pointed out earlier that within industry, it's not just about generating results, it's also around the validity of those results and the integrity of the data. So, you know, we're very stringent about the types of analytics that we will use and the way that they're conducted, so that everything has to be validated. So understanding analytics is absolutely key to really understanding drug development and the information that you will present to a regulator to get data approved or get a drug approved. So I hope that creates a little bit of context.
And most of our applicants won't have had sight of that rigor in their experience to date, unless they've already worked in industry.
Thank you. We still have a couple questions. I know we're going slightly over time, but I'm conscious that obviously people are still asking questions. We should try and answer them. Can people with a degree in pharmacology apply for the masters?
Absolutely, yes. So quite a few who have been taken onto the course have had that title to their degree. We haven't excluded any degree titles, but it's really how much biotechnology or molecular biology or protein biochemistry is in the content that you've studied. And of course, it could be any amount in any particular degree title. So pharmacology usually has got plenty of what we're looking for, and there are many examples from different universities around the country and around Europe where that has been the case.
Great, thank you. And we had a question here for Amy, if Amy, you wouldn't mind answering. It was just regarding funding, how you found funding the course. Were you okay with the funding, or was there any specific route you went down?
I went down the government loan route. That was the easiest way for me to do that. So just paying back kind of once you're running over that threshold. That was the best route I went down.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And I believe that's about it. We had a couple extra questions which we'll look to get back to on an individual basis after this, just to provide a bit more information. Yeah, thanks ever so much for everyone's time. Thank you, Amy. I think it was really beneficial for all the attendees to hear from a current student, a previous student, a graduate, and obviously what you've gone on to. And thanks ever so much for John and Sian. And if anyone has any questions they'd like to John, Sian, or Amy to answer, then please do email in.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
thank you. Cheers, Ollie.
Okay. So that's the end of today's webinar. Thanks very much, and we hope to hear from anyone else soon. All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right.